the Western world is in dire need of chemotherapy, for it has a cancer known as individualism. 1, 2, and 3. It's time for the grand finale, though I can assure you there's absolutely nothing grand about what you're about to see. In the first episode, we spoke of how the bourgeoisie consolidated the wealth, power, and fame of the Western world into their self-serving hands. In the second episode, we spoke of the consequences of such a hoarding, such as the creation of the decadent and the foul, hopeless conditions that they inhabit. But in this third and final episode, I'll be showing you the type of person that's ultimately responsible for holding this poisonous charade together. And they are my least favourite threat of them all. This is the third threat known as the disposable. So at this point you're probably wondering, what's a disposable? Well, sometimes it's better to show than tell. Ugh.
Have you heard of the Marvel movie? You heard of the Marvel movie? Have you heard of the Marvel movie? You get Captain Americano, the Incredible Hulkerino, the fan of the Captain Americano, Avengers Areno. Have you heard of the Incredible Hulkerino? Captain Americano, the Incredible Hulkerino, just a new Reno.
The bourgeoisie are easy enough to understand. Rich people who psychologically act in their own individual self-interest, who are divorced from the consequences of their actions. Likewise, the decadents are easy to understand too. Poor people who exist in foul conditions as a result of the bourgeoisie's greed, who have almost zero opportunities for improvement. But the disposable isn't that easy to understand, because they don't really stand out. Wealth-wise, they're usually right in the middle, and they are only really defined not by what they do, but more what they don't do. Godlessness, childlessness, assetlessness. It is these three traits that ultimately define the disposable, and it is them that we must focus on to understand them. So let's start with godlessness. It's no secret that the first step to destroying a civilization is to target its religion. As religion, whether people like it or not, is the underlying framework which spawns a society's social and economic values. But when religion is subdued, the framework withers, and suddenly everything in society, such as morals, becomes up for debate. And from such uncertainty, experimental ideologies have the opportunity to slowly rear their ugly heads and attempt to become the new status quo. When the bourgeoisie sold out their nations to enrich themselves, they obviously couldn't be honest about why. Yes, we're shipping your jobs overseas to pay those workers less so we can make more money. Yes, we support illegal mass migration to lower wages at home so we can make more money. Yes, we're pushing feminism on women so there's more competition amongst workers so we can make more money. Probably wouldn't have gone down well. Thus, they had to pretend to have a morally virtuous position, to hide their self-interest, which is exactly what neoliberalism, especially the socially progressive arm of it, provides. No, you see, we're shipping your jobs overseas to help put an end to poverty worldwide, by paying them 5 cents an hour. No, you see, we're implementing mass migration because we need to save people from war zones, like France. No, you see, we're pushing feminism on women to save them from the patriarchy. Yes, you go, girl! Now, of course, the progressive excuses for such acts are so ridiculous that it seems like only a fool would believe them. But as stated earlier, in the absence of a real religion, people suddenly become much more prone to believing such illusionary idealisms. The existence of the divine is the highest reverence possible in the human psyche, and it is from this that believers are granted an almost superhuman-like resilience against suffering and hope for better days. But when the idea of God, religion, or any sort of higher spiritual thinking at all has been destroyed, all that remains for the layman is this mortal plane and their position within it. Hence why totalitarian ideologies like communism, fascism, and yes, the progressivism of today fester under such conditions. because they sing sweet, soothing melodies to such desperate disbelievers to reinvigorate their life with meaning, even if, again, illusionary. Which brings us on to childlessness. We humans have an innate, strong biological desire to reproduce. In fact, the only reason why I, you, and anyone else on our planet even exists is because someone bothered to make us. And I'm not even necessarily referring to our parents or even our grandparents, but our ancestors from thousands of years back. No matter who you are watching this, you are, factually, descended from people who fought in wars, battled crippling plagues and diseases, and likely travelled very long distances with a lot of suffering. Also, you could be alive today and watch this very production. All it would have taken is one of your many hundreds of ancestors to die, and your entire bloodline, and thus history as we know it, would have been completely different. Truly, it's absolutely unbelievable if you really just zoom out and think about how fortunate we all are, just to even be alive. Life, truly, is one of the greatest gifts that we can leave behind. To me, the idea that in the year 3000, a millennia from now, that there could be someone, or many people, who only exist because of my actions today, is truly beyond inspiring. Sadly, however, this viewpoint is becoming much less commonplace. For whereas the Abrahamic religions declare to be fruitful and multiply, the newfound godless mantra we find ourselves under today seemingly does everything it can to discourage people from having children. Look, you shouldn't have kids because of, climate change. We've got to reduce our emissions, you know? Look, why not just kill your kids? I mean, plan your parenthood. All we do is just crush its skull and snork it up with a vacuum cleaner. Come on, it's totally ethical. In fact, it's a human right. Evil. Now, the real reasons why childlessness is pushed are obvious. Whereas children used to be an economic boon, they are now, since globalization, an economic bust. Children can no longer work until they're older and are expensive for the state to maintain, having to pay for their education for 1.5 decades, and, due to rising decadence, likely welfare payments to the single mothers who look after them. When the bourgeoisie can just brain drain the rest of the world with already grown, educated, and easily exploitable people, why would they want people to have children? Exactly. But even putting the bourgeoisie's desires aside, in a godless society where the only thing that matters is how much money you have, even the very concept of having children is easily mockable as a foolish decision, even in the eyes of the subverted general population. After all, children cost money, time, and huge amounts of effort. Why do all that when you could instead eat at fancy restaurants, go on lengthy holidays, or buy the latest shiny metal brick? And this mindset is just one of many reasons why the fertility rates across not just the Western world, but the entire world, have started to plummet. Of course, the biological desire that especially women have to reproduce still exists, hence why artificial placebos such as dogs are now started to be treated as if they were children. Very, very disturbing. Which brings us on once more to assetlessness. It's not exactly rocket science why it is that people want to own their own house, because a house is an asset, meaning something that is pretty much always guaranteed to have some value. That, and you can ultimately give it to your offspring in your will to financially enrich them after your death, a process known as generational wealth. But if people aren't interested in having children, then what motivation do they have to own their own house? And yeah, exactly. Renting is often cheaper than paying off a mortgage, it has no long-term commitment, and you have no need to maintain the property either. To the childless person, owning such an asset really doesn't bring much to their life. Hence why the popularity of renting has absolutely skyrocketed in recent decades, while home ownership rates have absolutely plummeted, giving houses the common perception of being seen as an investment, much to the bourgeoisie's delight. Okay, so let's get this straight. You have some people who have no God, no children, and no assets? But what do they do with their lives? Simple. Consume, consume, and consume. Giorgia Meloni, the current Prime Minister of Italy at the time of recording, once said, and I quote, Everything that defines us now is an enemy for those who would like us to no longer have an identity and to simply be perfect consumer slaves. And so, they attack national identity, they attack religious identity, they attack gender identity, they attack family identity. I can't define myself as Italian, Christian, woman, mother. No. I must be citizen X, gender X, parent 1, parent 2. I must be a number. Because when I am only a number, when I no longer have an identity or roots, then I will be the perfect slave at the mercy of financial speculators. The perfect consumer. And yeah, that's exactly what a disposable is. Void of any long-term responsibilities, the disposable distracts themselves via endless consumerism, spending every cent and penny on numerous products and services, such as movies, anime, and video games, in a desperate attempt to give their life some meaning. Numerous polls have been conducted throughout time, whereby the American public have been asked how important certain values are to them. In 1998, 70% of respondents said that patriotism was important to them. But in 2023, this number had decreased to just 38%. In the same amount of time, religion fell from 62% to 39%. Community involvement from 47% to 27%. And having children from 59% to just 30%. Meanwhile, do you want to know what the only value that went up was? Money. From 31% to 43%. By every metric, the average American, and assumedly the average Westerner at large, cares dramatically less about anything that revolves around community, and only cares more about money. This is the rise of the disposable. It should be noted, however, that there are two types of disposables: devout disposables and undevout disposables. The devout disposables have an almost sycophantic worship of authority, believing almost everything said by the bourgeoisie mainstream media, and adore their corrupt academic establishments, that, in all likelihood, they likely got in debt just to attend. They usually live in a soulless cosmopolitan city, such as London, Los Angeles, or New York. Crowded concrete hellholes that are completely devoid of community. Here, they rent an apartment that is usually the size of a postage stamp, where they languish in a state of medicated depression. During the day, they can often be found working for a widely known global megacorporation who treats them with nothing but hostility and revulsion. They often do not enjoy work, do not enjoy life, and certainly do not enjoy where they live. Hence why they tend to magnetize towards consumerism, spending their money on meaningless tact to feel like they're accomplishing something and give their life some meaning, with the Funko Pop being by far the most symbolic of such pointless purchases. But they're so bad that they require their own production. Nevertheless, if you try to talk to a devout disposable about important things that are going on in the world, such as what I've been telling you in this series, they'll likely just look at you with a dead-eyed stare, akin to a robot that doesn't know how to respond. If you did manage to get something out of them, however, it would likely be nothing but confusion, or worse, frustration.
What's this guy talking about? What? What's this guy talking about? What's this guy talking about? What are you talking about, man? You mean the Marvel? The Lego Star Wars? What are you talking about? What's this guy talking about?
It's as if, all their lives, these people have been put in a box, where they've been told to just trust the elites, know your place, and stay in it. The purpose of life is to consume products, don't ask questions, and wait for the next product. As such, anything that doesn't revolve around such products, or the political issues presented to them by the bourgeoisie, they are simply incapable of comprehending.
What's this guy talking about?
The devout disposables do, however, love discussing trivial nonsense like, should you put pineapple on pizza? Or, is Xbox better than PlayStation? Or, whose sports team is better? As these pointless artificial conflicts scratch the inner urge of debate that they have, but can't truly exhibit, as their minds have been artificially locked out of discussing subjects that actually matter. If you want to witness devout disposables and their unusual behaviour firsthand, you need only head on to r/casualuk on Reddit, which is filled to the brim with such types of people, who are often found bathing in a malaise of nonsense conversations, usually about food. Speaking of food, factually, we humans breed animals just to kill them for their meat. We even have a word to describe such animals: cattle. Whereas we give our pets at home names and look after them accordingly, with cattle, we just tag them with a number, feed them up, and then kill them when the time is right. One might find that disturbing and not want it to be true, but nevertheless, it is. Cattle are animals who were made purely to be used and then disposed of. But contrary to popular belief, humans can also share this kind of logic, as that's exactly what the devout disposables are. Cattle. People who have chosen, whether knowingly or unknowingly, to be nothing more than disposable economic assets, living completely empty lives only to eventually die and leave nothing of significance behind after they have fulfilled their economic purpose. Needless to say that the bourgeoisie love these types of disposables because they are the almost perfect minions for them. Submissive, obedient, distracted, and proudly so. It's just sad. On the other hand, however, you have the undevout disposables, and these are people who are checked out of society for one reason or another, who can often be found languishing in distractions, for such escapism is truly all that they have to keep them sane. And when I say escapism, I really mean escapism. I'm not talking that they like to occasionally watch a movie or play a game here and there. I'm talking that such virtual worlds are their life. They're the kind of people who would spend all night on World of Warcraft getting their tailoring skill up to level 300, but won't spend 5 minutes in reality taking a shower to level their hygiene skill to level 1. And yes, I'm talking from experience. Let me tell you, as soon as this thing comes into your life, you're never having a shower again. Though undevout disposables can work, they are also known not to, leeching off their parents or partner if they somehow have one. Physically, they may be 20, 25, or even 30 and onwards, yet mentally, they seem to be stuck in a sort of perpetual teenage infantilism. Something that is easily garnered by taking just one glance at their bedrooms that pretty much always look like they belong to a 17-year-old. A fact that they, and everyone else around them, are aware of, but lack the willpower to change. It particularly annoys me how many young men have become undevout disposables, as throughout history, young men have been the people who change the world the most. It's young men who fight in wars. It's young men who take the most risks. And it's young men who are by far the most adventurous. Yet today, I'd argue that young men have become perhaps the most useless demographic of them all. It's no secret that today, the Western world has become borderline satanic, a society so evil that it would make even Sodom and Gomorrah wince. And so you'd think then that there would be no shortage of young heroes ready and waiting to help put a stop to such a disgusting status quo. But no. As most young men in modern Western society, rather than facing this new demonic status quo, have instead relinquished their God-given duty as the protectors and maintainers of mankind to instead cowardly hide away in virtual worlds. The bourgeoisie of course like these kinds of disposables less, as they are not quite as sheepish as their devout counterparts. But as they essentially pose no threats to their power due to being ever so distracted, they are nevertheless tolerated. It's just pathetic. Regardless of whether disposables are devout or not, however, the overall point remains, that being that these people are completely distracted in consumerism, living lives that are utterly void of any significant meaning. I was telling a friend of mine about the disposables concept, and he told me that it reminded him of Friedrich Nietzsche's Last Man. Friedrich Nietzsche being a German philosopher who was alive in the late 19th century, who noted that Christianity across Europe was slowly starting to lose its relevance. He thus tried to estimate what would take its place, or perhaps more importantly, how people would act in a post-Christian society. And he came up with the Last Man, who he describes as having the following traits. The last man seeks only comfort. He avoids risk at all costs. He is a pacifist, despising all forms of conflict. He is obsessed with equality. He has no care whatsoever for the divine, and is, ultimately, a nihilistic consumer. And yeah. There was a time when liking Spider-Man as an adult would have made people think you have special needs. Meanwhile today, it isn't really that uncommon to see grown men with bedrooms that look like this. Disneyland used to cater primarily to children, but today has seemingly started catering primarily to childless adults instead. It is now the norm for adults to act and appear as children. Grown-ups drearily complain about adulting or having to attend to perfectly normal responsibilities. Adults today are more caught up in superhero movies now than they were as children. They spend entire work shifts scrolling through TikTok. They play dress-up on the weekends and call it cosplay, as if this distinction lends it an air of dignity. I think of this fact whenever I walk past a war memorial or catch a few minutes of a war documentary. I imagine what past veterans would say if they could see us now. Is this really how we've chosen to spend the freedom purchased with their blood? People have simply stopped growing up. Person, you don't have kids? How old are you? Me, 31. Person, that surprises me. I'd be lost without my kids. How do you find meaning in life? Me, Marvel keeps coming out with films, so I have that.
Marvel, 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 Marvel.
I notoriously never watch films, but through pop culture references alone, I know all about this purple dude who apparently collects stones and eviscerates half the population by putting them in his golden glove.
Dude, let me tell you about the latest Marvel from Marvel. Okay, so you had the superheroes, and then you had the supervillains. But get this, the superheroes defeated the supervillains. Can you believe this? This is like unbelievable writing. I love Marvel, 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 Marvel.
Whereas most people throughout history have been on their deathbed, surrounded by their family, of whom they've looked after, with a hope to soon be reunited with the divine, the Disposables of today will have nothing of the sort. Rest in peace, Mr. Disposable. He played video games. Rest in peace, Miss Disposable. She liked Disney. Rest in peace, the Disposables. They all loved anime. Lives completely and utterly defined by intellectual properties. I wish I played more League of Legends! In fact, some of these people can become so engrossed in fictional worlds that they can't even communicate properly without them. Arming teachers is not the answer. The teachers at Hogwarts were armed, yet students still died there. Think about that. Or worse, they can't even spend 5 minutes in reality without a distraction. This was my setup during my wife's pregnancy. Steam Deck, Windows installed, lots of system tweaks and performance upgrades, keyboard, mouse, audiophile headphones, #PCMR, playing Escape from Tarkov. I mean, it's just absurd. But good luck trying to tell them that. A gentleman on Reddit makes a very sensible comment. It is not appropriate for adults to consume mainly superhero movies or morally simplistic fantasies like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, etc. It is okay to indulge in these things sometimes, but they should be portioned as carefully as junk food in a nutritional diet. The effect of primarily consuming media commercially designed for as wide a mass-market audience as possible, including children, is of stultifying the audience's critical thinking and lowering the standards of basic media literacy and comprehension. This has an overall effect on society, as people take simplistic mental frameworks gleaned from low-brow content into the real world, where situations are complex and require nuanced thinking. Wise words. I wonder what people made of such a comment. Minus 160 points. Of course. People should watch TV or play video games until it's their time to go. Think about it. Not everyone has a superhero story or grand ambitions or some ethereal purpose. It's okay to live a life relaxing and knowing you've had fun watching your favourite TV shows or playing some fun video games. That's what people need. The ultimate goal in life should be to work a job, and in your free time, order food delivered to your door, and live enjoying the finest that Disney Plus or Steam has to offer. Oh, come on. Surely no one agrees with that. Plus 93 points. Now, to be clear, you are not a disposable just because you have no connection to God, don't have children, or because you don't own any assets. No, these things take time. What does make someone a disposable is the willful intent of not having a spiritual intellect, the willful intent of not having children, and the willful intent of not owning any assets. A disposable intentionally rejects these concepts entirely. And it is this which is the ultimate reason why I dislike disposables the most. For it is their submissive, lazy, and cowardly mid-witted nature, devout or otherwise, that prevents true change from ever occurring. For if they were angry at the state of modern Western society, as they should be, then they could collectively unite to help fix it. But instead, they simply distract themselves from it in a selfish, individualistic manner, allowing this cycle of misery to continue ever onwards. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this production, it's this. These people, en masse, really must realise that they are worth more than the McDonald's and Coca-Cola lifestyle that has been thrust onto them since their first breath. So, what can be done about this? Well, currently consumerism has been normalised as an unquestioned positive. Nothing more than an innocent way to spend time. This is the current perception. Thus, what is required is a new perception, as the only way to defeat disposability is to make people subconsciously afraid of being one, whereby all forms of consumerism and escapism are to be shamed with an intensity never before seen. Of course, the mass hoarding of pointless products in the pursuit of happiness being shamed is a given, but what must be especially targeted is escapist media. Movies must be transformed from their current perception, which is a light-hearted fun form of entertainment, into the new perception, which is mass-market garbage that appeals to the lowest common denominator and makes one dumber as such. Anime must be transformed from its current perception, that being a bit of quirky fun, into the new perception, which is disgusting, borderline illegal drivel. Gaming must be transformed from its current perception, that being the ultimate form of art, into the new perception, being a time-sinking infantile toy that only children or man-children do. Every product hoarder must feel shame, every moviegoer must feel propagated, every anime watcher must feel criminal, and every gamer must feel infantile. Even if the new perception must be over-exaggerated or not even fully believed, it doesn't matter, as an overcorrection is necessary. The average person must be made so scared of being a disposable that even the mere sight of consumerism sends them into an instant state of mental repulsion. And from this repulsion, disposability will slowly wither away, starting with the undevout disposables, who will angrily wake up from their escapist slumber, and then the devout disposables, who will likewise do the same out of sadness. Whereby ultimately, from such developments, this house of cards may finally start to blow over. When I say that these three threats are the enemy explained, I mean it. Everything I ever speak about, in any production, links back, somehow, to these three terrible mindsets. If the disposables remain sleeping, the bourgeoisie remain empowered, and the decadents remain increasing, then from this, humanity, and subsequently the world at large, will only continue to go backwards, entering a dark age beyond our current understanding. But if the disposables are awakened, the bourgeoisie are overthrown, and the decadents are finally cured, then our species will finally be able to move forward, resulting not in a utopia, for there will always be new issues to face, but certainly a much more prosperous world at large than what we currently have. As of the time of recording, the average person is blissfully ignorant of these 3 threats, going about their life as nothing more than a disconnected individual. But you, dear viewer, having assumedly watched not 1, 2, but all 3 of these episodes, clearly must be one of the few people who has that voice in the back of their head telling them that something is very, very wrong with our world. Henceforth, as one of the few who are somewhat awake, it's my hope that you can keep these 3 threats in the back of your mind and try your best, in your own little way, to help douse them. But also, to navigate yourself and those you love, collectively, to embrace healthy mindsets that are the exact reverse of this disgusting status quo. TLDR: distrust the Western elite, reject the mainstream media, shame all decadence, believe in God, align with a strong religion, get married, have children, own your own property, reject consumerism, don't get lost in distractions, engage in a career you care about, reward those who respect you, bankrupt those who disrespect you, live life with meaning, always speak your mind, collectivize with the like-minded, and most importantly of all, remember that you are better than what has been planned for you. You now have the information, and thus the choice what to do with it is now yours.